I hate this. Hey everybody, I released a new video game recently. It's called Skibs. It's 99 cents on the App Store and it's free on Android. And it got featured on the Apple App Store. So I decided to make this video explain how I did it. And long story short, I have no clue how it happened. So let's dive in. To give some context, I am not an Apple user. I do not own an Apple iPhone personally as a phone device. I bought one to test my game, but it is not something I use personally. And aside from that, this is my first ever game made for the Apple platform, ever. So you will understand that I am just as surprised as you are. But because this is a learning experience for me, I was hoping that maybe I could pass on what I've learned to you guys. And because I am so confused as well, maybe if I go through the process that I took on, and maybe we could figure out what it was that did it. So let's go. Originally, I released the game on February 8th, and Touch Arcade actually did a preview of it a month in advance. It looks like here on January 10th is when they previewed my game. So just about a whole month before it came out, they tried it out themselves. They showed the trailer. They explained how it works. And I got some pre-order sales from it, I think. Not a lot, because I did also get pre-order sales from my family and friends. And I'll actually bring up the App Store Connect tab here. So you can see here when the game launched on February 8th, the day before February 7th, I had 36 sales. That would be the combined total between my family and friends pre-ordering it and any of the pre-order sales I got off of Touch Arcade. All right? And that's not a lot. If you're an Apple developer, you know that it costs $100 a year to put your game on the App Store. And $36 is not enough to make that money back. And usually, for any dev like myself, after you release the game, your sales just kind of plummet. You hit a peak, you plateau, and then you just go downward. And then you're just kind of hoping that something happens, that some spark occurs, and that you get more sales. But I didn't expect that to happen for me. So after I hit this plateau here and I started leveling out around February 11th, I was like, okay, we're done. I made $40 roughly, maybe, minus Apple's 30% cut. And with the $100 spent to get it on the store and the $1,500 for the laptop, it doesn't really make the money back, right? It doesn't seem very viable. So I got previewed on Touch Arcade, and that was cool. It gave me a couple of sales, but it wasn't anything substantial, obviously. Then when I did release, I ended up going to Reddit and I posted in all the different subreddits I could. Android gaming, iOS gaming, indie dev, game dev, mobile gaming, what have you. And somebody on the iOS gaming subreddit responded to my post and they said, "Hey Steven, I see that your app made it into the suggested new games we love on iTunes, which is awesome." And he's like, "And within the first week, how did you do it? Within the first week of it being available for sale, how did you do that?" I was just like, I don't know, because I didn't see it. I did not believe this user. I saw this comment and my head was like what the heck? I opened the Apple App Store. I did not see it anywhere. So I asked the user, "Hey, what country are you in?" And they said they're in Germany. So I thought maybe it's just European countries it was being promoted to. Nonetheless, I was really hoping to see it in the App Store. I would take a screenshot and say, "Hey, look, I got featured on my Instagram or something." And I couldn't find any evidence of it. So I really am not even sure it even happened, right? Like, did I actually get featured on Apple's App Store? Somebody says they saw it, but I didn't. So I have no clue. I have no real hard evidence that it actually happened, except for maybe the sales. But we'll get into that. So the user asked, how did you do it? And I kind of want to break that down for you guys here and maybe explain my thought process, right? So first thing was I found this article on a Medium site called Free Code Camp called How to Get Your App Featured on the App Store. It came out June 8th of 2018. And they list a bunch of tips that you should try to do that would increase your overall chances of getting featured. So let's go through them. I'll explain the ones I did, the ones I didn't, and what seemed to work for me. First tip is a clean app. This is very important and is one of the things I think reflects on my game. I worked as an Android developer for a long time, and in the Android world, there's a lot of defragmentation. There are thousands of Android devices. So it's been very custom for me to not only build an app, but to test it rigorously. And I think on the Apple App Store as well, they prefer if your app is bug-free, or at least doesn't result in the app being closed randomly on devices, on crashes, just anything like that. So I tested my game very heavily for all sorts of different issues. And 2 or 3 weeks before it went live, I was still finding a couple of bugs. So, it was a very scary time for me there because I don't like it when apps and games that I make go out with bugs in it. I don't think any dev does really, but to think, maybe I missed something kind of gave me some nightmares. It was just like, So on top of it being bug-free, or at least what I think is bug-free, because I couldn't find any more bugs after enough testing, is that the UI and the UX is designed in a certain way, right? So in my head, when I was designing Skibs, a big feature of the game is that as you play it, because the walls are these thick lines, what would happen is that you'd stare at the lines long enough and it would cause a motion after effect optical illusion. This can happen from a lot of regular things. You could be looking at a waterfall in nature, and if you look at it long enough and then look away, everything will look like it's just kind of melting. The rocks, the trees, the scenery. And that would happen with this game. You would stare at the walls that you're trying to dodge long enough, and then after you completed your run, you could look away and I'd see my bookshelf, the floor tiles, things outside the window just starts coming down, right? So this optical illusion was a big part of the design. And originally, I wanted to take all kinds of optical illusions and incorporate them. But there was so many, and I didn't know how to do it where it would still look clean, and it felt very muddled and messy. So I decided, let's just move away from that. And this whole design process makes making games a lot longer. It's easy to make a game, but it's not easy to design it. And I think because this is a game that's kind of abstract and not something I've done before, I didn't know how I wanted it to feel going through. So I took a good month or so making sure the UI felt a certain way, the icons felt a certain way. And essentially the design thought after this month was that if I can't make all these optical illusions work together, then let's go back to the source and derive from there. And the main source is that I'm not an artist. I couldn't find a lot of art that I thought worked with this game, so I used vector art. Your ship, your little triangle guy, is just a triangle made of lines, right? And the walls are also lines. It's just big rectangles, and they just jut back and forth like edges of a triangle. They're just polygons. So I thought, okay, if the majority of the game, the most part that you will be seeing is lines, let's make everything else look like that too. So if you go through the game and you look at the menus, all the menus and windows that pop up have a thick rectangle line look to them. All the buttons and icons are also outlined as well. A lot of art that you'll see is usually colored in. If I have a game controller icon or a button, usually like maybe there's a sound button for turning sound on and off. The whole button is usually colored in a certain color, right? I opted to make sure that my icons had an outline look that where the inside would be all black, so they blend in with the black background, but the outline would be colored. So everything is lines. The UI essentially is lines. They're not straight lines like the triangle or the walls are, but it's still lines. There is a consistent theme there. On top of that, there's also small design subtleties that I took into account. For instance, when you open up these windows and you interact with the UI, there are some things you can click on and some things you can't. For the most part, the things you can click on are icons that are colored. They have this rainbow multicolor effect, right? That was an effect that's used in the game heavily for one of the skibs that you're trying to survive the effects of. And I wanted to bring that into other areas. So I used that when designing the menus, when designing the logo. I want this rainbow feel to be throughout the app, right? So in all the icons, my decision was if it was rainbow, you could interact with it. If it isn't, you can't, right? So I purposely made choices where some icons you would see and they would not be colored because you would not be able to click on them. It was just there as decoration. But nonetheless, all the icons are still outlined. Doesn't matter if they're plain white, a solid color, or a rainbow color. There is a small subtlety in the design being that if it's rainbow, you can interact with it as a user. And it helps you not get confused as a user or player, right? If you were to be able to click on one in one screen, and then the next screen, I'm expecting you to interact with this icon, but it's not colored, you may not know that. So I think this plays heavily into the idea of having a clean app. Not only is the theme consistent, being outlines or lines in general, vector style, I'm implying certain things to the player through the design. If it's color, you can click on it. If it's not, you probably can't, all right? That's a clean app. And I feel like this is one of the major points as to why I got featured. I'm going to go through the rest of the list, but a lot of these don't apply to me, which is even more confusing as to why I got featured, right? So let's continue. The second part is use Apple's APIs. I didn't use any other APIs. I used a framework called libgdx. It takes my Java code and decompiles it and converts it to Objective-C using the iOS multi-OS engine framework tool. Intel made this tool and it takes the Java and it converts it to Objective-C for me. So that's not from Apple. A lot of the APIs they have, ARKit for augmented reality, VRKit for virtual reality, MapKit for using Apple Maps in your app, they have all these extensions and APIs you can use. Game Center would have been a great one, but I didn't implement any of these things. I have never made an Apple app before, and I did not want to try bringing in all this stuff into my Java framework and getting confused and lost. So I just wanted to try to make a game and get it on the Apple App Store. And then after I learned that, I would try to incorporate more of their things into my future games, right? So for me, I didn't use any Apple APIs, and I thought that was going to hurt heavily, but I guess it didn't. So let's proceed further. Down here it mentions having great visuals. Again, the reason I took this minimalistic vector design approach to the game is because I'm not an artist. I didn't have the money to pay for an artist. I didn't understand or know what kind of art style I wanted. So I just kind of took that all out and said, let's just make shapes, right? Again, this is my first Apple game. I just wanted to practice getting something out there, and then I could build up from there. So I tried to make it as simple as possible. Make a game about shapes in some way, right? And just move up. I don't have great visuals in this game. If you think the visuals are great, it might be because of the cohesive design, but there's nothing outside of that. There's just some pretty colors that I throw in. That's all pragmatic, but there's no icons that I paid for. I got them all for free. And again, all the icons are just UI related. So a lot of things, even the table in the status page where all your stats are for the points and your high scores and things, that's just built with a shape renderer. I didn't make that in Photoshop or GIMP or anything. It's just pragmatic. And again, I don't have what I would consider great visuals. It's not a 3D game. It's not, stylized with 2D sprites or anything. It's just It's very basic. It's very basic. Here, frequent updates. I didn't have frequent updates. I had one update, and they almost didn't let me post that update. So what happened was I posted the game, and it wasn't going to be out for about 2 months. This gave me time to fill out their development story form, which I'll get to in the video soon. But essentially, I put the first version up, and then as I dabbled a little bit more with the app, I thought, I want to move some of these icons on the menu screen. They don't look center to me. I had them in one spot, and I ended up removing something, so everything moved down except for these icons, and I thought, these don't look good. They should be adjusted a little bit. Honestly, they went from like here to here. That was it. It was not a big update at all. I posted this update, and Apple came to me and they said, hey, we don't see any changes in your game. We hope you're not putting malicious code in your game that would trick users into giving away personal data, credit cards, they actually came prepared and scared that I was trying to take advantage of users or their user base. But I was just trying to update the UI. And that's it. Another thing that goes back to having this clean app. I just thought it looked nicer if the icons were a little bit more center. That's it. So I don't have frequent updates to this app. I am working on Game Center now and implementing it currently. You'll see that in the next month. But did I have that when I released? No. Did I have it when I got promoted? No. Was I making updates frequently? No. Next tip on here, iOS only. Apple likes exclusivity, but I'm an Android developer. That was not going to happen, no matter what. It's going to be on both platforms. I had mentioned that it was on Android when I submitted the app, and they told me, you can't say this. Remove it from your app description. So being an iOS only app game is not something that I did, and I did not get any extra bonus points for that either. Localizations, I did not translate this game for any country. When I released it, I only put it in 10 or 11 countries because I had read that they were mostly English speaking there. When I was talking about it on subreddits, a lot of commenters said, hey, I can't find your game. And it's because they are in countries that I didn't release it to. So a day or two after it was out, I opened it to almost all the countries, I think except for China, because Apple wanted extra tax material based on how you're making money from China. And I didn't want to go through the work of getting all that stuff prepared because I don't know how. So I just opened it to all the countries except for China. But I don't know if that affected it or not. Does making your game available for more countries give Apple a better reason to promote it? Maybe. But did I translate anything in the game to the other countries? No. I did not translate any of the mission text, the status text, the tutorial text, none of it. It's all English. So this may not have helped me either. Keywords and search results. This is where I kind of lucked out on Apple, and it kind of hurt me on Google. Skibs is just a made-up word. My brother made it up. And I just wanted to use it. So when you search on Apple, it appears top of the list. It is a unique term that is not used in other video games. So this kind of helps a little bit in just getting it in the search results and being found by the users. On the Google side, when you typed in Skibs, the first whole week that the game was out, it would say, did you mean to search for the word skins? And it would just return all these Minecraft modding skin apps. You couldn't find the game whatsoever unless you had a link to click on. It was pathetic. A week later, it got sorted out, and you can find it now when you search for it, but Google, man, it did not help. So on the Apple App Store, having a unique name did help in the search results, but I don't know if that makes a big factor into Apple actually saying that we're going to promote your game. Having a unique name, I'm not sure, especially one that sounds like Skibs. It just talking about the game to friends and family, saying this word doesn't sound normal. So I don't know if it makes it stick out or if it just makes it stick out like a sore thumb. So that's the thing, is that I have a unique name, but I don't know if that really helped. And it hurt me on the Google side, for sure. The last step they mentioned on the site is to fill out the form. What is the form? The form is Apple's submission form that you put in the details of your game, your development team, the different APIs you're using, your game story, how did you build it, all this stuff. You tell Apple your story, and maybe they will utilize it and they will promote you in some way. It could be new games coming out soon. It could be, here's a new feature for a game that's already been released. It could be, hey, this development team has a great story and we want to feature just them, and you'll get to see all their apps and games in this little section. It could be a bunch of stuff. So I did fill out this form. I'll go through the form with you as well and explain what I put down and what I didn't. I use my developer name and website, app name, blah, blah, blah. The submission is for a new app. I described my app, the number, highlights. Honestly, this game is so minimalistic, there wasn't a lot of highlights. There's some challenges, and there's a cool optical illusion effect. That's it. It was very hard to talk about this game as if it was something new or exciting because it's very small, minimalistic. It's an endless runner. You've seen a million with these little triangle ships. For the most part, it's not brand new. The biggest difference in my game was that when you hit things, they made the game harder. Usually you would hit things and it'd be a power-up, right? This is not. This is the inverse. So that was like a kind of interesting thing about my game. But it was hard to describe that, so I don't think I really mentioned it. Platform was iOS Universal because the framework allowed me to put it on iPad and iPhone. I only supported the English US. I think I only clicked on the 10 or 11 territories that I was going to release in because I submitted this form weeks before the game launched, before I even opened it to the other countries. My submission date, I think I just put in an early date. I may not even submitted it yet. I'm not sure. Whatever date I posted it and got it into the App Store on the developer side before it got released, I put that down. And then the release date was February 8th. That was what I was gunning for. In reality, the game was mostly finished before the end of December. And there were some things I had to fix up and change before that, some bugs that I found, but I already had it in the App Store and I was waiting 2 months so I could reach out to press and try to get talk going, right? So here it says share links to your developer website, demo videos, marketing plans, or presentations. Because I was spending time trying to reach out to press, I had to learn how to make a press kit. And I did so. So that was one of my links. The press kit usually contains trailers, clips, other posts from other news organizations talking about you. It'll have your logo, things like that, right? Your development story, your company history, things like that. Maybe some extra bonus stuff too, like the soundtrack to the game or whatever. I posted the website that I have to talk about the game and the press release website connected to it. That was it. Business model was paid. I knew that. Originally, I was trying to make the game have ads on both platforms. I couldn't get the ads to work on the iOS side using the ad framework that I was using. So I said, screw it. I'll just remove all the ads on the iOS side and I'll make it $1. And maybe that'll work, maybe it won't. We'll see. Because usually players don't want to pay for games and they wish the games were free. So I was a little worried, but I think in the end it worked out for me. And maybe if I made it $2, I could have double, but maybe not. I'm not sure. Then they said, your story here. I just literally copied the story that I have on my press kit to this. And then, is this a correction to a previous submission? No, because this was my first submission. So that's the form. It specifically mentions, please let us know 6 to 8 weeks in advance. Months before I finished the game, I had seen this form. I was already thinking about this ahead of time. And I said, okay. And we wanted to release the game in January. And then we just kept pushing it a week back, a week back, a week back, because every time a week ended and I still didn't know if I was ready to release the game or reach out to press, it felt like I was going to have less time to talk to Apple. And I knew that if Apple was saying, we want 6 to 8 weeks, I would give that to them. I didn't know if it would work or not, but I figured I would give them that time. So I pushed the app release back just to make sure that I had this 6 to 8 weeks notice for them. I think I ended up posting the form at the 6 to 7 week mark. I don't think I did it exactly 8 weeks before the launch date. I think it was roughly 6.5 weeks beforehand. But it was something I kept in mind. But again, after me going through this form, you can see I didn't really have a lot to say. There wasn't much here that I think that they would, take and leapfrog from to talk about, to promote me for. So let's go back here. February 13th, before I even noticed the comment on Reddit, Touch Arcade posted another article mentioning my game. They say, out now, all these games. I am not in the title of this article. This is a list of games that came out that week. And the way that it talks, it just sounds like, hey, these are a bunch of games that we thought were cool. It's also alphabetical. Skibs starts with an S, so I'm very far down this list. This list came out, and then I started to see a little bit of increase in sales, and I thought, okay, this is cool. Maybe this is why. The user on Reddit says, I got featured on the App Store. Maybe this list is directly tied to the App Store features. I don't know. I have no clue. So I thought maybe this was relevant. And just to explain some more, I'll say that in that 6 to 8 weeks period where I was prepping for the App Store and I was reaching out to Apple, I was also reaching out to Google. They did not promote me. I reached out to Touch Arcade and multiple websites for reviews, previews, mentions, anything. Touch Arcade was one of the very few people that actually said anything. They didn't even review the game. They just mentioned it a month beforehand. So I don't know if Touch Arcade played a role in this at all. I don't know if someone at Touch Arcade thought the game was fun, so they posted about it and then Apple took word. Maybe somebody at Apple played the game and they thought, hey, I like this, so I'll make sure it gets into the apps that we're promoting this week. But again, I have no clue. They never reached out to me. They never talked to me directly. I never even saw it on my device. So did it happen? I'm not sure. But if we look at the sales, February 13th, I had 2 sales. And February 13th is the day that Touch Arcade article came out. The next day, I had 47 sales. The day after that, 69. And it goes like that, between 50 to 70 sales a day, up until the 20th. Then I start going back down. That was exactly 1 week. So, was I promoted on Apple for a week? I think so. I never saw it. Again, it was one person in Germany that had mentioned it to me. I didn't think that I would be, based on all things I just told you. I didn't use any of their APIs. I did not make it iOS specific. I was hoping to focus more on the Android side because I'm an Android developer, I'm an Android user. That's my platform of choice. So, again, this is so confusing for me. While I think this is amazing, I'm glad I made back the $100 spent to get the app on the store. Sure, it doesn't pay for the laptop. It's another $1,500, but I don't think I've ever done this before. I've been making games for years. I have not been releasing them for years. A lot of them are hidden or just not meant to be sold. They're for fun, but this was my first attempt at being a professional. I did press releases. I reached out to news outlets. I made it multi-platform. I also released it on the desktop. And to be clear, when you're playing on a desktop, there's a bigger screen, so it's even easier for the optical illusion effects to take effect. But Apple is where I happen to see the most amount of sales, and I think it is because I got featured. And I just don't know why or how. I have to think that it's because of all the extra work. The time spent designing it, a little bit of time spent making sure that it felt different from other endless runners, in that the game plays against you. You don't get power-ups, you get power downs essentially. And the fact that it was just bug-free and looked good. But again, I have no idea. I might have just got really lucky. And this kind of sets a bar for me, because every time I release a game, I get a little bit better at understanding the platform I'm releasing on, my framework that I'm using, design skills, like all these things. You know, this time, I just assumed the game would come out, I would get less than 100 sales, I'd plateau and sink, plummet real fast, and I was going to be okay with that because I finally released a game on Apple. I reached out to press. I did all these new things I've never done before. And I thought, this is such a step up for me. So I was happy with that. I didn't think I'd get promoted at all. And now that I have, the bar has been lifted. If my next game doesn't get promoted, or if I don't see the same amount of sales, I'll feel bad about it probably. I don't want that to be the case. I'm still taking this as a very high note, you know. This is great for me. It's just that I don't know how I did it. So I don't know what to do next time. I have been practicing with Game Center and Game Services on Android, so we'll see an update to the game soon to have those things, and that will be a heavy feature on the next game, whatever it is. But will that make a difference in being promoted? I'm not sure, because I really don't know what it was that happened this time. Other developers who may have been featured have probably seen better numbers than me. I don't doubt that. And, you know, this is very small change. You know, it doesn't, $600 doesn't pay for things. It doesn't help me live a life, you know? Like, I still have to have a job that pays for the bills. This is side money at that point, right? But I think that's wonderful. That's the whole point, is if I can make enough games, you know, if I have 20, 30, 40 games out there and they're all making 1 or 2 sales a day like they are right here now that I've plateaued back to the bottom. If I have 20 games, they're all selling 4 copies a day, that's $80 a day. That's relaxing money, you know? That's just passive income, and that's great. So I would like to get to that at some point, because even if I'm not being promoted, I still have money coming in for doing all these things. But the fact that I did get promoted blows my mind, and I'm thankful for that. I'm glad that it happened. I have a level that I need to reach for the next one, so I have ambition, inspiration, motivation for that, but it does not mean I am any less confused.